Hi, and welcome back. Today we're going to take a first look at the KBEAR Diamond. I actually picked this up. It actually arrived yesterday, so I haven't spent a ton of time with it. But I kind of wanted to go over kind of a high-level overview. Because originally when they released it, they said, "We hope you like the tuning." And I thought that was kind of a weird statement. So I started digging around a couple weeks ago, kind of reading some of their first impressions of it, some reviews of it, and I kind of convinced myself that it was probably something that I would like. So I ended up having some Amazon money. So I bought it on Amazon. It's about $87. If you buy it straight on AliExpress, it's about $79. So, $7 isn't too bad getting it straight from Amazon in 2 days. So the overall package is super nice. Comes with a leather carry case, magnetic clasp. The IAM itself is pictures don't quite do it justice. I actually thought it resembled more of the TFZ number 3, but this is sort of the only thing that really resembles it is the shape-ish and this back carbon fiber piece. But this all metal construction and the brass fittings, it's just super premium feeling IAM. No offense to the number 3, and I have it, but it's all plastic and it doesn't really feel all that premium. Sounds premium, but in your hand it actually doesn't feel all that premium. So this is the cable that comes with it, and this was specifically chosen for the Diamond. It is a silver-plated OFC, oxygen-free copper. And there's a story on the blog, and I'll probably post a link to it of how they ended up with this cable, but they purposely shipped it with this cable because it sounds the best, and that kind of goes for the tip selection as well. So there's 2 sets of foam tips. There's black and gray, and there are two different sets of silicone rubber tips. So they called it kind of out of the box, ready to go. You don't have to worry about buying tips or buying cables. Everything was sort of purposely included so you'd have a great out of the box experience, which I did. Like I said, I didn't spend a ton of time with it, but it is super comfortable and super premium to hold. So I will say that they got that part kind of 100% right. So this price range, so these are, $79. People sort of said, well, what's the closest competitor? And that's going to be probably this guy, the Moondrop Starfield. It's about, I think, $109. And so the guys who tuned the Diamond, Jurgen and Kopi, are co-bloggers on audioreviews.org. So if you actually want to know how the Diamond stacks up against the Moondrop, he has some words about that. They also did a review of the Moondrop from their perspective. So it's probably the most definitive source of information on how the two resemble each other. So he does say they're actually kind of similar. This is just a review of the Starfield, so I was not going to say here, but I think I call this one the Tightrope Walker because of this one sentence. Forward, not for the most sensitive ears. And what they did with the Diamond, which I found kind of fantastic, is they sort of pushed the edge of dynamic drivers. So if we kind of stack these around the way their natural order. So this is the blonde, single dynamic driver. I think this is CNT, carbon nanotube. This is DLC, so it's a bit tighter and faster. They chose that specifically for that. So the blonde, as a single dynamic driver, does everything you would expect a single dynamic driver to do. It's a concentration on the bass. It's full and rich. The notes are very thick. Mid-bass bleed. It is a very kind of bass-focused IEM. And that's what most people didn't like about it. But as far as what would you want out of a single dynamic driver, it sort of lives up to everything. A very natural, organic, bass focused IEM. That's exactly what the Blonde does. So then you had this weird thing, and so Copy actually tuned this one as well. So this was a TRN BA5. So this was sort of the opposite. This is 5 balanced armatures trying to sound like one dynamic driver. And somewhat successful. Kind of fell down in the sub-bass range. But, kind of on the spectrum was, 5 BAs trying to be a dynamic driver was kind of an odd thing to do, but I like it actually. So then, and we'll kind of let this sort of fit in on my Moondrop Starfield placeholder. This is the DB3, and so I think it's actually 2 dynamic drivers, but it's not bass focused. It's more mid-centric focused. And first time I put it on, I was like, I'm not sure where the bass is, but it's not here. And so the Diamond kind of tried to fill into this slot here, which sort of bridges the gap of smooth, syrupy, sweet, fat, rich, bass, bleed. There's that sound that you get out of the Blonde that is just absolutely smooth and thick. It's kind of like honey. Vocals are super rich, and but that's not exactly what everyone wants. Some people want the fast and the analytical, the precision, the technicals, and that wasn't the strong suit of the Blonde. And then you had the DB3, which is sort of that clean, analytical, precise, fast, that other side of the wall that the Blonde never really addressed. So the people who hear the Blonde were sort of fans of this style. Very clean, no bleed, analytical, precise, a little bit cold, clinical. These are all kind of adjectives that fit this side of the wall, and kind of where the Moondrop Starfield sort of crossed into that. It's got kind of a warm bass, but then they kind of crossed that line, which I'm not really a fan of. I like to stay on this side of the wall, but when you kind of cross the line, it becomes fatiguing for me, and that's why that line, it says it's for sensitive ears. So I think I don't have the Moondrop, obviously, but I think I would call that the Diamond about as far along that spectrum of going from kind of a smooth, fat, thick bass sound to all the way over into clean, analytical, precise, and sharp. The KBEAR sort of hit that point where I was happy with it. It didn't cross the line where the DB3 kind of actually did. So I was kind of super happy, and it's not a unique sound, but you're essentially what I almost feel like it is a dynamic driver trying to sound like a hybrid. So you're trying to get a lot of that warm, rich bass kind of Blonde sound, but get all the technicals, get the speed, the note weight, the crisp and the clean sharpness that you kind of get on the Starfield. Push that as far as you can go with a dynamic driver without offending people like me. And that's kind of exactly, I think that the Diamond just kind of walked that tightrope just to the point where it sounds amazing to me, but I can tell that if it took a couple more steps, I probably wouldn't have liked it. And they will kind of talk about the mid-bass bleed, and I think that's kind of a big point here, is that they allow just enough mid-bass bleed to not make people mad, but to give the bottom bass vocals, note weight, all those things just enough so people who like the Blonde would kind of feel at home. And the bass is sort of different. It's more kind of impactful, faster and tighter because it's DLC. The Blonde is kind of maybe a little slower, boomier maybe. This is definitely kind of a step more in the technical range of trying to push this dynamic driver into the better technicals. And I think that's how they sort of described it. And that's exactly how it comes off. It's like there's what you're missing in the blonde is a lot of that sharpness on the uppers and the mids. And when you hear female vocals, you get a lot of the low end, but the upper end of a female voice, not so much. And the first thing that you'll notice about the Diamond is it's sort of reversed. There's plenty of bass there that fills in the voice, but you're actually hearing the higher ranges of the voice first. It's kind of fantastic, and it's kind of like hearing everything over and over again for me, because I never really had anything other than DB3 that really pushed that edge just to the point where I sort of still like it. Everything is still recognizable. And the TFZ, I think, tried to do the same thing. It was super heavy on the bass, but they still tried to address the uppers, but tonality wise, it kind of went a little wonky. It wasn't as natural as it should have been. So the Diamond tries to address all these things all at once, have some of the bass from the bass and the organic natural sound of a dynamic driver like the Blonde has, but have the technicals of the Moondrop or any of your other Tin Hi-Fi, those guys who sort of live in that upper, mid and upper range. And, the Diamond for me sits right at that intersection of it. People can either like it or hate it. It either doesn't go far enough back into the bass or far enough into the uppers. For me, it kind of sits right at the perfect place because of that bass bleed, where I don't miss the bass at all. You can still hear it, still slams, but now you're hearing a lot of that sharpness, precision, not so much clarity, but a very cleanness to the sound, like just enough bass bleed where it's not mudding anything up. It's kind of a fantastic way they walk that tuning into that position where still getting some bleed, but it's not necessarily mudding anything up. You're still hearing notes. You're still hearing instruments. It's not like the Blonde. It's definitely more technically, more analytically correct. So kind of fantastic. I was kind of blown away. And like I said, I only spent about one night with it, but it is definitely different. And it's just not, you can compare it to the Blonde, but they're not the same. They're kind of addressing two different sides. Same thing with the BA5. I think they kind of pointed out right. I think the Moondrop Starfield is about the closest that you're going to get to this Harman-esque sound, but on the analytical, clinical side, as opposed to the warm and fuzzy honey sound of that. So second thing that I thought was kind of weird that people were talking about was the Soundstage. So I think Jurgen, who tuned it, said it was kind of an average width, but it was deep. Some other people said it was wide, but not deep. Some of the people just said it was deep. I think they're kind of underestimating how it comes across. It's not like the Blonde where everything is wide. It sort of varies with the music. It can be very wide, it can be very deep, but it almost fills a volume. So I sort of understood why you're getting kind of both sides of it, because depending on what music you're listening to, it either sounds wide, kind of like the Blonde-ish, or it sounds deep, and you have the vocals in front of the instruments, and you have this kind of nice depth to the musical presentation that you don't find everywhere. So I kind of felt, as I was going through the playlist, I kind of felt both things, and I thought that people sort of underestimated how good the Soundstage actually sounds. And some of the presentations on some of the songs, even like the Rolling Stones, Sympathy for the Devil, really wide, like kind of abnormally wide for what I'm used to hearing. And then other songs, it was the depth. It was the vocals being not too close, like really intimate, not between your ears, but sort of just in front of you. That front row performance style vocal, where it's not, the person's not speaking to your brain. It's just far enough away where it's a very intimate, great performance, just like kind of a great presentation of where the vocals should be. And the Blonde is really similar. And I think the Diamond brought them in just a little bit, and then you get rid of, a lot of that mid-bass bleed, and you minimize that, and now there's just like this clarity to the voices and a crispness to the voices that you don't get necessarily on the Blonde. It's wild. I was kind of blown away. It's kind of kept on going. So that's about it. Just a kind of a quick 15-minute overview of the Diamond, and I'll do like a full-blown, here's some of the best music. I haven't quite figured out what the best music is yet, because it's it kind of borders on the playlist killer, where it seems to do everything really well. So it might be a little more difficult to narrow down to what I think is best. But yeah, at first glance, nothing was really horrific. It wasn't like when I go play some EDM and it sounds like there's no bass. You're not really gonna get that in the Diamond. It's a matter of kind of that Starfield line, is how far did they push the treble and the upper mids. I didn't really feel like anything was being fatiguing or too much or overdriven. It just really walked that line for me personally of that's exactly where I wanted it to stop. And I wouldn't have notched it up a bit, because that would have turned me off. And turning it down a little bit, maybe you would have thought that there's more potential there, but I just thought that it was a really great kind of a tuning job of where they stopped, as opposed to really pushing it to the edge, which may have become fatiguing or overdone or too cold or any of those things. So that's it. I will do another full-blown review of this one soon, but I just wanted to kind of do a quick overview. So thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.